Why is shame such a powerful emotion? How does it affect us mentally, physically, emotionally? I'm Nadia Davis. I'm a mom, author, attorney, and Kundalini yoga teacher who has experienced public shaming that brought me to my knees. On this podcast, I'm going to tell you how I'm living the work taking shame out of the shadows. I'll give you real-life advice and skills to take away with you throughout your day. You'll hear from powerful guests who have overcome trauma and emerged stronger than ever. You too can ban the shame within and around you. Join me. You are not alone. Welcome, everybody. Is shame a motivator when it comes from our own heads? Or can it be a road to darkness? Is shaming of others when they struggle what we can do to motivate them to change for the better? Or is it pulling them down a road of darkness? Here on Home is Within You, we drag shame out of the shadows so we can understand it better and transform it into power. I'm Nadia Davis, and today we have a woman whose energy and choice of love to help spread the word and to help others in recovery found me. Her energy found me and I was attracted to it. And so, of course, I said, I'm going to contact her and ask her if she would like to be interviewed. We have Kim Bellis today. And most importantly, she's a mom. She's a mother, which is what attracted me to her. She is the founder of Sober is the New Cool. And I'll give a little bit of background, but we're going to hear from her directly. She, it was maybe 10 years ago, 11 years ago, had this instinctive motherly calling to help her son find happiness by assuring him that alcohol wasn't necessary for him to enjoy himself. And it dawned on her, her own kind of lack of self-love and harming of herself was having an effect on him. And I'll let you explain this and correct me, absolutely. But what she did, she drew upon that energy and love as a mother, and she stopped drinking for 3 months. And a time went by when she decided to remain sober for another 3 months. Following that, she found herself happier than she had ever been in a long time. And what started as an example for her son became something that she decided to commit to herself for herself. And this is, in my opinion, a prime, beautiful example as a parent in recovery when our own feelings of shame can be transformed through a parent's love into power for ourselves and others. It's now 2024, and she's super, super proud that she's been sober for 10 years. Sobriety has changed her outlook on life for the better. And I want to get into all the details of that and the work that she does today. So welcome so much, Kim. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you very, very much. I love what you do. I love your energy. And I think really this is what the world needs to heal. And this is a huge part of it. So thank you for what you do, Nadia.
So tell me about little Kim. Where did it all begin for you? And how was like the boilerplate of, beliefs as a child? This is a loaded question, but like what was the framework that you grew up with in terms of how we interact with the world? Tell me about little Kim and how you grew up.
But quite honestly, I had a great life. I had, two great parents. We were not, we did know about alcohol problems surrounding us. So I wasn't a stranger to alcohol and the effects it could have on people. But with that said, I grew up in a great family home with brothers and sisters, and you know, just a going to a good school, traveling, doing a lot of good stuff. And it was kind of like just, I was always the person though that always wanted to help somebody. It was kind of, since I was little, I was always the one that seemed to be at that place at that time that somebody needed help. And, I thought, okay, this is okay. And people used to say, don't you feel that sometimes people are always taking advantage of your kindness? And I thought, no, this is just it just
In
seemed
your nature.
very normal. It was like really normal to do. And, life continued on. I got married. I had two beautiful boys. And then, 2013 happened where my son Matthew, an avid football player, all of a sudden started having grand mal seizures. So from one day to the next, I couldn't even let him drive a bicycle because I was so afraid he would have a seizure. And at the hospital, actually, it was quite something that they would say, oh, well, you don't have to really worry about it because you can still drink a little bit. And I was like, what? This is like insanity, saying you're going to have medication for the rest of your life. You're having grand mal seizures, but you could drink a little bit. Which teenager do you know can really do a little bit? Because once they start going, sometimes you never know where it can end. So with that said, I found myself in quite a situation, very nervous. I was worried about my son. I didn't know how to help him. And after a few weeks or a few months, we kind of got some medication. I said, Matthew, you've got to start going out. You cannot just stay home and not see your friends. And, so we started trying to get him out. After a few times, he'd call me and he'd say, Mom, come and get me, 30, 40 minutes after he had left the house. And the third time, I just said, okay, this doesn't make sense, Matthew. What's going on? He said, Mom, I don't fit in. I don't fit in anywhere. They're either smoking pot or they're drinking, and I can't do that. So, and I said, oh, Matthew, that is absolutely insanity. And as I said it, I had the biggest glass of wine in my hand. And for some reason, I just said, that's it. I'm going to stop for 3 months. I'm going to prove to you, because 90% of the people I know keep to this day say there was never anything wrong with you. And with that being said, maybe there wasn't anything wrong with me, but I feel like I was living half a life instead of a full life. And it took me loving my son more than I loved myself to help him. And with that, after 3 months, he said, see, Mom, now you can drink as much as you want and go out and be like everybody else. And I said, okay, Matt, I'll do another 3 months. And it'll be 12 years in January that I've never touched another glass of wine or alcohol, not a sip. And I guess I was lucky because I was doing it for him as opposed to for me, even though I was feeling the benefits. I was feeling better. I was feeling stronger. I started to meditate. I started to exercise more. I was more positive. And I'm quite positive anyways, but I could see there was a real shift. But the one thing I did see the first year when I had stopped drinking, everywhere I went, people would say, just come in the corner. We can have a drink. No one will know. And I thought, if this is what's happening to me, I was 52 at the time. I thought, how is my 14-year-old son going to get through navigating alcohol and social gatherings? It's impossible. It's not going to work, right? And so we started. And he was going on to your thing of shame. He was ashamed that he couldn't drink. He didn't want to tell people he had epilepsy, which I couldn't understand to save the life of, but he just wanted to be normal like everybody else, right? So shame can be whether you drink too much, it comes in so many different forms with mental health and addiction. So to me, I just kept thinking, okay, I've got to do something. So my sister came up with a logo. This was on a kitchen island. This was supposed to be just for him to be able to say, my mom stopped drinking for me. You can't bring booze into the house to tempt him, right? So it was kind of blame me, whatever. And it worked like that for the longest time. And we created a Facebook page. And 11 and a half years ago, there was nothing other than Hello Sunday Morning out of the Australia that
Mm-hmm.
would talked about alcohol. And my Instagram, my not my Instagram, my Facebook, because that's where we started, just blew up. And it was from there on, it just took a life of its own. And
Were you
there,
surprised?
yeah, because
You normalized it.
yes, and every time I thought, okay, I've done, you know, this is this is okay. I've done whatever I have to do, and maybe I'm not giving enough, maybe I'm not doing enough, maybe there's something else I should be doing. Something would happen that would put me right back on this path. And it's been like that for 12 years.
That's what I wanted to talk about. So when you were talking about your childhood, you said, something was just there
Yeah.
that where I wanted to help people. But let's take a moment to reflect on that, on that part of you as a child that had this light and this motivation to like go over to love, to want to improve the world. In my humble opinion, we all have that as children, and that's our soul calling, right? And then there's these, as our identity develops over time, we start having a sense of our worth from things outside us, and our survivalist kind of mind creates these fears and judgments, and this is on the counter end. And then there's this end where there's this love calling, and then there's fears and judgments. And that's kind of the human condition, right? So tell me, where do you think that calling to love, and it was a sense of purpose that you found, and right?
Yeah. And, I think the funny thing is,
Where do you think it comes from?
I think growing up too, I mean, I struggled because in one way I knew what I was doing was the right thing. I was doing good things. The other part of me was always saying, you haven't done enough. You haven't accomplished enough. You're
Bam.
not good enough. You're not tall enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not smart enough. You should be this. You should be that. And I struggled with that my whole life.
That was going to be my next question, is how do you think shame showed up?
Yeah.
It's subtle. It's not like I feel ashamed.
No.
No, no, it's a secret belief we're defective. And so share a little bit more about that, so that, again, we're dragging it out of the shadows because it can pull us into that darkness.
Yeah. And I think too, the thing is the blonde hair, there's such a mask. People look at you and they see what they want to see, I think, right? And like I said, I was very positive, but with that said, I hid a lot of that kind of stuff. I didn't, I was really great at giving, but I wasn't good at taking for some reason. It was
Mm,
just, that
or
was,
receiving, you mean?
yeah, it was just for me, it was just like, even compliments were hard. It was like if I did a good job or I did something, somebody would compliment me. It was like, oh yes, okay, and then like let's move on back to them, and what else can I do? What was the next thing I could do? It was
So
never.
you see that balance? You
Yes,
see there was this love and this calling, and then on the other end, your mind, right, was trying to separate you.
yeah, and it would, and I don't even think I realized it at the time.
We don't.
It's just, and also you have to remember, I'm 63. In those days, nobody talked
Whoa.
about anything.
Right. You were a trailblazer.
So, this is really when you think about it, your feelings were kept inside. Your whatever happened inside the home stayed inside the home. There was none of this, let's end the shame, because to me that's huge today. I don't like certain words. I don't like the psych ward. I don't like these words from the 1940s, 50s, 60s, because I think there's so much shame, and I think shame is a waste of time on many, many,
Hmm.
because all it does is bring you down, and you just stay in a place of such negativity and such self I think, hatred almost in many cases of many women I help. And for them, it's just so hard to see that what somebody else sees in them. And that I really think has to change. I don't want anyone to wait until they're 63 like me to say, not that I'm perfect. I have still a long way to go, but I'm good enough. And that's what
Well,
I
the
want.
beauty of your story and your message today is your admission that there was the pull, right, of the self-criticism, the self-judgment that were a lot of fear-based thoughts, right? And that was the boilerplate kind of structure was okay, then you had love, you were being called to give love and nurture it for others. And you see how like that's how your soul was functioning in a body and you went throughout adulthood, right? How and you were balancing that. And like how did your young adulthood play out navigating those two things?
Well, I guess looking back, and I think, I went away to school in the United States. I had lots of friends. They would come to Canada because they had never been there. I traveled throughout the United States. I went to Europe. There was really, it seemed like every time I guess it came up, it got shoved back down,
Okay.
right? Because of everything else that was going on around me. And my friends also, there was very few people that ever shared how they felt. It was really, and I think now looking back that you're asking me, it was almost like when people had too much wine, the tears would flow and all this
Mm-hmm.
emotion would just come up like a
Mm-hmm.
volcano almost, right?
So the identity and sense of purpose that we all develop um, to feel worthy, right? It sounds
Yeah.
like you were a student. You were you. What was that sense of identity and those titles and roles that you had that gave you a sense of purpose and worthiness?
But you see, I never really felt like it was enough. Nothing I did.
You see?
Even though I was happy on the outside, there was always this thing where I should be just a bit more. And looking back, it seems so ridiculous. It's like saying, I wish I had legs that were like, like Heidi Klum. I'm 5'2". That's never going to happen. Like the unrealistic things that I would think that I needed to be as a person. And that not realizing, I think the biggest thing that what I give to people and what I love to do is good enough, that I couldn't even realize that at the time.
Right.
Blows my mind today. Why would I want to be anything else than who I am?
So you're hitting it on a nail when you give that example. I believe it's spiritual warfare, so to speak. That when we normalize that hole and that sense of defectiveness that pops up, after bliss as a child, and then we grow up, we have all these roles, and then we suddenly start to feel let down or like we're letting people down. But those thoughts, that's not our true self, like you're pointing out. And
Mm.
if we can normalize that this is our mind creating these thoughts,
And I
it normalizes it. It puts it out there, and that's our ego identity. And so for one reason, or another, you were able to balance that because but you always felt that sense of a whole, right?
yes.
What do you think that was? Do you think it's your mind, and did you believe that you are defective?
No, you know what? I think it was all about not having enough self worth.
Okay.
That's really where I think it stems from. And I think that that's the biggest problem we face today with all the young women that I've met from around the world. If they have a breakup, if they lose their job, if something happens, it's like, sheer destruction. And it's that lack of self-worth. And that's why I love doing these I am affirmations, because I think people forget all the qualities they have.
Right.
And we have to really stress that with everybody, because nobody is perfect. I don't care. Everybody's got shame on some level, has done something that they're not proud of. So, like, most
Right.
people, when you tell them your story, they say, me too, right?
Hmm.
When you open up.
And human connection requires us to be vulnerable, right? What we feel vulnerable about is what we have learned to feel shame about or in ourselves. So the beauty of sharing the stories is great, but we also need to normalize that we all have that sense of defectiveness. But in my opinion, that is what we can separate ourselves from in observation, is like our ego mind versus, yes, it's self-worth, but what is the source of self-worth? Like, what do you believe is your true self? What do you believe is the opposing source against these thoughts?
That's really hard, because I have to tell you, today was a really hard day for me. I had met a young woman over 8 years ago or 9 years ago, and she became like the daughter I never had. And
Hmm.
we had such a great connection. She was in London, England. We have a matching tattoo. We spoke every day, and I lost her this year to mental health and addiction problems. And today was hard because I kept thinking again, I didn't do enough with everything that I learned, with everybody who I meet, all the therapists I've met that could help her. They still didn't work. And that still gets me right here. So that self-worth and that emptiness today was huge. And I
Hmm.
should be proud of the 8 years I had with her and how we got through so many situations. Yet
Hmm.
it's it's terrible. Like I still feel deep down inside, what if only I had done this? What if I had done that? So even if I'm doing these affirmations and saying, yes, I did this, yes, we got through all these times, I guess
I'm sorry about that.
but I think that's part of, I have to share that now, because I think we're all a little bit broken inside. And if we don't share that with others, and then they don't feel comfortable enough sharing it with us, I think we're not doing anybody any justice. And then for me, even though on the outside, all this positivity, and I love my life. I have a great life, and I loved my 8 years with my sweet Natty. But I only, I still wish, what if, right? So how do maybe I should ask you the question, what should I be doing? Because that is a form of, I guess, shame that I have inside, that I didn't do. And I know I did a lot for her. I know, we had a great relationship, but, why do I still feel that shame, that there's something more I could have
So
done?
I believe so strongly that we have to create that sense of a home within, that, we all need a safe place to
Yeah,
share, cry, be vulnerable, let it all out, like you're
yeah.
saying, do the affirmations. And hopefully we have that outside us from varying different sources. But ultimately, that voice, we're not doing enough, that's our ego identity.
Mhm.
And I just don't want to say that. Like, we're normalizing. We're humans with a soul, and that's a common thread as humans, is this voice, this longing, this criticism, right? That's what I mean about normalizing. We all have that criticizing voice and longing. So that, in my opinion, is shame as the weapon our mind uses. And so talking about it and normalizing it is another step deeper
Yes.
to helping others in that
Yeah.
spiritual awakening, not just talking about the falls and the struggles, but talking about how normal it is to have voices that say, not voices, but thoughts that say
Yeah.
we're defective.
Yeah.
That's what this podcast is about. And so when we share the struggles and we share the roots of it, then we can say, okay, where is my safe place
Yes.
to recognize that, and then to build the spiritual, you know, connection. That's the home. It's like, in this body with this mind, I'm going to remind myself that I am not those thoughts,
Yes.
and I'm going to go over to love. And
Yes.
then that's where your self-worth and all of that. But first, before we can even work on self-worth, right? We have to feel that calm and strength
Yeah.
in our body to hear it. And so, with the fact we have a choice like every day between love and fear or judgment, how do you get to that place with
I
your
think,
work in yourself to choose love?
you know what? I honestly, Nadia, believe there's something so much higher than me because every morning or every night when I open my phone, there is someone or something or a thought that crosses my mind, and I reach out to somebody, and people say, "How did you know?" You had. I don't. There's something telling me
Yes.
stop and do this, or you have to be at this event when I don't really feel like it, or I have to be. And I have to tell you, I really feel that I am so blessed because I keep meeting the most wonderful women and men and people, and it just changes me and fills me up. You know,
Yes.
I met a woman not too long after I lost Natty that has 8 children and is 13 years sober, that writes books for children about sobriety, mental health. And I have to tell you, she changed my world, you know, by meeting her. And
Yes.
I think by staying open and meeting new people and finding all these communities and connections within the world, that's what saves me
It's
every
the
single day.
synchronicities.
Yes, yes,
And so there's this pull on one side of
yeah,
to the darkness, fear,
yeah,
judgment, and then it's just a beautiful example when we're pulled and listening to that love and putting it out there, they are just drawn,
yeah.
and there's this whole pool of soul and love and warmth and light, and it is something beyond us.
And you know, the other thing, I have 2 wonderful boys, but I always wanted a daughter. And now
Mhm.
I feel like I have daughters all over the world.
Right?
And you know, I have to tell you, I am just the luckiest because they bring such joy to my life. Even with the problems and you know, they think they're creating, you know, stress for me. They're not. They're really actually making my purpose or giving me a purpose of self-worth and love.
So, indeed, you feel that you have a sense of a home
Yes.
within you.
Yes. Yes.
Can you describe it and expand on the source of creating that calm and stability, that sense of security within your own heart, Kim?
You know, I think like when I met you, Nadia, I just get these connections with people. And I really, you know, it starts off like something like this. And then I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of the women in the last few years since COVID is over. And when we meet each other, Nadia, in real life, it's like, oh my God, it's like we've always really known each other. Like I feel like there's a
Yes.
connection with you. And I think that's where that calmness comes in because we just seem to read each other. You
Mhm.
know, there's something that happens, and just the way we help each other out, or if I help somebody and then they help somebody else out. I'm so proud. Like the young women that I have one young woman who's a nurse, and she had, you know, a problem, and it, you know, she was sober and then she relapsed. And now she's helping people all over the world. And she's back to nursing. She's back up on her feet. She's got a great life. She loves me talking about her. She does podcasts. She's a light. And she's like not even 35 years old. What a perfect inspiration for so many
Right.
others, right?
Right. And so, okay, we are seeing that movement today in woman,
Yes.
in speaking our stories and owning our stories and in having just full transformations. And that is this, I believe, like lovement of, I mean, movement, a lovement. I like that. A
I
movement
love.
of love,
Oh,
a lovement. There
yeah.
we go. That's our
That's
new
it.
word.
That's the word of the day of the year, I
I
think.
mean, yes, right? That's the new word, a lovement. Now, let's get real. Women in particular have been publicly shamed. And for me, that was the hard part, okay? Treatment, jail, hospitalizations followed this experience of having my reaching out for help publicly shamed. And so we in this lovement as women speaking out are really the counterpart to a history of women being shamed. Now, have you been shamed? And that is what where this tapping into love is the movement against shaming of human struggle. So, what has your experience been with being shamed? And what advice would you give to women out there who are walking through their own mental health, alcoholism, addiction struggles that are being shamed in
When
their
I,
life?
when I started this, Nadia, a lot of people, I don't know if they meant to shame me, but they felt that my story was almost not valid. Yeah, it was a great story. I was a mom, but I wasn't an alcoholic. I wasn't underneath a bridge. I wasn't this. I wasn't that. And all these preconceived notions of what they were saying, who I was, that my story was not, and I don't even
Bad
say
enough.
the word, tragic enough or
Hmm.
ugly enough or shock enough to be on podcasts or talk about it because oh well she was a mom and she was helping her son and so she's helping people and she's what it was very fluff, it was like
Hmm.
almost dismissive.
So, isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
Because it reveals kind of a societal assumption that if you're an alcoholic, you're under the bridge.
yeah. And who cares if you have 3 glasses of wine, Nadia, and it's no good for you, or if you have 10?
Right.
It really, nobody should have to justify
Hmm.
why they don't drink or why they don't do drugs or why they do anything as far as I'm concerned. If they exercise, meditate, yoga,
Hmm.
whatever they choose. And I believe that, sobriety is not, to me, it's about wellness. It's not about sobriety anymore. It's about
Hmm.
wellness for me now. That's the
Yes.
word I love because I find it's accepting and
Hmm.
people can talk about it much more openly and then come into the rest of it. But to open up the conversations, I really feel that it's about wellness. And I'm not going to judge what it takes for you to be well or what you choose to do
Hmm.
to be well. I don't think it's my job.
So, how did eliminating alcohol improve your wellness?
Well, one, having a sick child, I was very, very nervous, very nervous. So, I used to think that by having a few glasses of wine and going to sleep, I was, going to sleep better. No, I sleep much better. I would get up in the morning. I was much more positive, even with everything going on. I was able to manage things a lot better than I would have had I continued to drink.
Did you beat yourself up less?
You know what? The first few years, I was so busy worried about my son. It was so not about me, which
Okay.
comes back to the real story. I never really wanted it to be about me. It was about my son.
Hmm.
And it turned into something much more. And, they say I'm like the mother, the sober mother to the community. People used to say, "Oh my God, don't you feel so old?" I said, "No, I feel like being a queen if they say I'm the mother to all the girls." But then I thought, okay, maybe I'm not, I'm shamed again, right? Being old, right? Like, so
Right. If
I,
it's
I
not
think
one thing, it's the other.
I
Right.
think it's a perception of how you take what people say to you. And
Exactly. And so when we are connected to our truth, none of that matters. And so, I had to get to that point of saying, okay, my true self is whole, divine, complete, is in this infinite form that I connected with in a near death car accident 25 years ago, exactly this month. Through breath, being able to reconnect to what is my true self, then I was able to put those messages in their place. So, what do you believe is your true self?
I honestly think that for me, the more I can give, the happier I am. That's it's as
So,
simple as
love,
that. It's
love.
yeah. When I'm helping someone get through whatever it is, and being not judgmental and being open, and I think what it's done for my children is not only make them proud of what I do, but make them want to be better human beings. When you see somebody on the street, give them half a sandwich, get them a cup of coffee, just be aware of what's around you. And I think that's important.
So, you tap into, and your work is very much focused on that intersection between a mother's love
Yes.
and wellness.
Yes. Yes.
Can you give your top 3 tips to mothers and parents out there about how to navigate that intersection of self-care and then caring for your child, like when the anxiety pops up? um, what are the top 3 things that you would do while navigating that intersection between parenting and caring for a child that has a diagnosis?
I think the first thing I would do is try to listen more and just step back, because I think most mothers have a tendency of wanting to fix everything,
Mm.
and we can't. We can't. And as sad as that is, and as hard as that is to realize that there's something bigger and better than us that's in the universe navigating life. We have to really sit back and listen to our kids, try to not be judgmental, and to never, ever, ever give up. Ever, ever. No matter what, no matter how bad or dire the situation seems, never, ever give up. Because there's many times there's a way through, getting through these things. Some people we lose, but there's a lot of people we can save. And even if it's our own kids, sometimes we have to let them fall a bit for them to be able to feel that sense of accomplishment also. That, because if we do everything, and I've learned that with my son Matthew, that I do feel I did do too much. And, it instead of giving him the wings to fly, I kept him kind of like a little bird in a cage. And that's not healthy. That's not healthy. He's doing really well today and he's 26. But, I think for mothers out there, let them fly. Let them fly a bit.
Mm. And to do that as mothers and parents, we had to do that and learn how to do that for ourselves,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So, as the questions were posed at the beginning of this, I asked, is shame, should we use shaming to motivate others? I believe instead we should follow Kim's lead and encourage others to tap into that love that they are and not lead them down a further road of darkness. And most of all, when we see others, in that darkness, entering that, she said, let's provide space to just listen.
Yeah.
Right? That safe space. And I know this is an overlap between people struggling with a mental health or addiction or alcoholism versus a child or a young adult that we know that has a certain diagnosis. But they all fall, right, into the same pool,
Yes.
human struggle. And so together, we're asking you to please just tap into the love, tap into the longing, and therein a whole vast, vast ocean of love and light and warmth can be generated. I want to thank you so much for the work you do. And what is your favorite song? What is your favorite motivating song, Kim?
What the world needs now is love, sweet love.
Oh my God, I love it.
Yeah.
The theme song for this podcast is a song written by my brother, and it's called As Big as Love. No doubt, no pain is as big as love.
And
So
the other thing too, Nadia, people, we don't know what anybody's ever, when we're not walking in their shoes, how they feel or what they've gone through. And please, I would ask everybody before they judge anybody to please just take a step back and look at them through the eyes of love.
perfect. Love you. Bye.
Love you.
You are not alone. If you are dealing with shame and trauma, please reach out to me through my website, nadia-davis.com. You can get a free band shame tip sheet and find out about upcoming events. I'd love it if you picked up my book, Home is Within You, wherever books are sold. If you like this podcast, please tell a friend, leave a review, and make sure to follow me on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Sending warm hugs.